Welcome to section 6, Azure. In this section, we'll create Azure resources, including a web app and a database. We'll then deploy the React application and the .NET API that we built previously. Azure is Microsoft's cloud computing platform, which includes Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS, and Platform as a Service, or PaaS. Infrastructure as a Service comprises Linux or Windows virtual machines which are managed by the client. Platform as a Service comprises managed services including App Service, an HTTP-based service for hosting web applications, Azure SQL Database, a scalable SQL Server database, Azure Active Directory Authentication, a mechanism for connecting to Azure SQL Database using identities in Azure Active Directory, and Key Vault, which can be used to securely store tokens, passwords, and other secrets. We'll use the Azure Command Line Interface, or CLI. This is a command line tool to connect to Azure and execute commands on Azure resources. Resources can be created in the Azure web portal, but the CLI makes it easier to run scripts that quickly create a number of resources. The first step is to download and install it. To enable scripts to run from Visual Studio Code, I'll install a number of extensions. First of all, Azure account for sign-in, PowerShell to run PowerShell scripts from Visual Studio Code, and Azure CLI tools. To sign into the Azure CLI, run the login command, az login. We'll run commands to create a database, an app service, and a key vault. These will be contained within a resource group. The application will be deployed to Azure by pushing commits to a remote Git repository. A resource group is a container that holds related resources for an Azure solution. This is a list of az group commands. Run az group create to create a new resource group. Required parameters are location and name. The output from a command defaults to JSON. Other output formats can be specified with the output parameter. These include table and none. This script can be downloaded from javaconsult.co.uk/reactsurvey.zip. I'll declare variables named resource group and location with values resource group 1 and UK South. In PowerShell, variables are represented by text strings that begin with a $. To create the resource group, run az group create. The app service plan hosts a web app which we can create with the az web app create command. Required parameters are the resource group, the name of the app service plan, and the name of the web app. The web app's name must be able to produce a unique domain name, appname.azurewebsites.net. By adding the deployment local Git parameter, we're creating a Git-enabled app. The JSON output includes the deployment local Git URL property, which is queried for with a JMES path query and assigned it to a variable. This URL can later be added as a Git remote. We can then deploy the web app to Azure by pushing commits to this remote. Select the script and press F8 to run it. We can optionally assign a managed service identity to the web app. Managed identities can authenticate to any resource that supports Azure AD authentication. This will enable the web app to connect to the Azure SQL database without needing to store connection strings in the application. By running the AZ web app identity assign command, a system assigned managed identity is created in Azure AD and is tied to the lifecycle of the web app. The next step is to configure a database. Azure SQL database is a managed platform as a service database that runs on the latest stable version of SQL Server. Run AZ SQL Server create to create a database server. Required parameters are the name of the server and the resource group. Other parameters are the username and password and location. Next, run AZ SQL DB create to create a database. Required parameters are the name of the database, the resource group, and the database server. We're also specifying the service objective, which determines compute and storage scalability. There's a free tier, which is available temporarily and is useful for development. Service tiers are categorized by Basic, Standard, and Premium. Run the AZ SQL DB list additions command to view a list of available service objectives for a specified location. There's a choice of DTU-based pricing, which bundles compute and storage requirements, or vCore-based pricing, which allows compute and storage requirements to be set independently. Run the AZ SQL DB show connection string command to display the connection string. To create a firewall rule enabling access from a local PC, run AZ SQL Server firewall rule create. This will enable the database to be accessed from SQL Server Management Studio. Specify your IP address or a range. You can check this at whatsmyip.org. To create a firewall rule enabling access from Azure services, such as a web app, run AZ SQL Server firewall rule create with 0000 as the start and end IP address. Azure SQL Database supports SQL authentication, which uses a login name and password. An alternative is Azure Active Directory authentication, which is a cloud-based identity and access management service. First, get the signed-in user with the AZ AD signed-in user show command and assign it to a variable. Use a principal name is the login name for a user. From this, we can use the azad-user-show command to get user information from the directory. The query returns the object ID. Next, the AZ SQL Server adadmin create command creates a new SQL Server Active Directory administrator, specifying the server name, the resource group, and the unique ID of the Azure AD administrator. This enables connection from SQL Server Management Studio with Azure AD multi-factor authentication. To let the database know that the Azure web app is authorized to communicate with it by using its managed identity, we need to add the app service identity as a user on the database and specify read and write permissions for that user. This combination associates the example web app 1 identity as a user of the database and then allows that user to read and write data. If the identity is system assigned, the name is always the same as the name of your app service app. Azure Key Vault can be used to securely store passwords and tokens and control access to them. This is preferable to storing security information in the application. We've configured the database to use Azure Active Directory authentication, so storing the connection string in the Key Vault isn't necessary, but I'll store it in the Key Vault anyway, along with the JWT token key, which is used to authenticate calls from the React app to the web API. Use the AZ Key Vault create command to create a key vault. Next, run the AZ Key Vault secret set command to add a secret to the vault, specifying the vault name and the name and value of the secret. Configuration in ASP.NET is performed using one or more configuration providers. Configuration data is read from key value pairs using a variety of configuration sources, including appsettings.json and Azure Key Vault. There's a last one wins policy, so a connection string in appsettings.json, where Azure connection is a property of connection strings in the JSON file, will be superseded by a secret in the Key Vault named connection string -- Azure connection, where the double dash is syntax for parent-child. Display the secret using AZ Key Vault secret show. We can add an additional secret to the vault for the JWT token key. To enable the web app to read secrets from the Key Vault, we need to add an access policy. First, retrieve the web app's object ID. This is a GUID that identifies the principal that will receive permissions. Then run the AZ Key Vault set policy command, specifying the vault name, the object ID, and the secret permissions. We're assigning get and list permissions to the web app.